Already hit record. Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning into our meeting today for an update on where we are with our Brownfield assessment grant that's been going on since we were approved by the EPA back in the spring of 2023. This update from us today, myself and Tracy Costa from the Verdantis team, is for all work done through Q3 of year 2. Yes, we're that far along, if you can believe, and we want to make sure that we're doing our part to keep all of you informed, as this is a regional project and we've made substantial progress since our last meeting. All that said, we have accomplished a lot with our program, but definitely still have much left to do. So we'll be leaning on our communities for their continued support and collaboration regarding our active sites, and many of you to hopefully give us some leads on a few more potential contaminated properties if we can. But we seem to be making good progress, and there's no question that we've put our funding to some great use, and we'll all try to get to hear about that shortly. Moving on, just a quick agenda to throw at you. I'm going to get us back on pace with a quick refresher on what this is about and what's been done so far. I'll cover some programmatic updates and revisit our ongoing working collaboration with Tracy Costa and her team from Verdantis. As is necessary, I'll offer a quick summary on where we are with respect to our program budget. Like I mentioned, we're now officially in year 2, so the wheels are turning and we're getting stuff done. We'll have Tracy update us with some details on the assessment work that's been performed on our sites we're targeting. This will hopefully give you some insight into the kind of contamination we see in our region and a glimpse into the potential some of these sites have for redevelopment around here. Lastly, we'll get into next steps and where we can go from here at this point. We're still looking for just a few more sites, so happy to have those conversations as well. So as you know, and not to be too repetitive, this is a long 4-year grant. OCPC was awarded $500,000 by the EPA to address burdensome brownfield sites that have documented environmental concerns in our region, so our 17 communities. And specifically, we're using our funding to conduct phase 1 and phase 2 assessments through our LSP, who we've contracted with. Phase 1 assessments, I'm sure you know by now, essentially a deep review of all the existing information available about a particular site. Phase 2 assessments, you recall, actually identifying and sampling for contaminants at these locations. So our plan has been to use the award funding to conduct as many of these as possible at locations that have been stuck or constrained by environmental concern. We do also intend to conduct some site reuse and redevelopment plans for sites that offer good potential. That's the other part of this grant that OCPC will be conducting in-house, but that's likely to come later after we've completed site work. The plans for that in our application, I'd say maybe we're a bit too ambitious, but because they call for so many, but I'd like to do at least 3. I'd say that's realistic and a good number to shoot for, and I think we have the sites to do that. We're doing our best to keep the program and process public, but things have been pretty straightforward for us as we've had to deal directly with communities for all of our sites. We're not dealing with many privately owned sites, so things have been pretty open and transparent with respect to how we coordinate our planning and assessment activities. And this is how we get the most out of the grant, right? So we hope to continue the dialogue we're having with our communities, and with any luck, maybe we can add a few more sites to our list. I also want to mention, because I don't think it's been emphasized too much, that we're approaching this and taking this on as an economic development exercise, right? Hence why I've been assigned to the project. You know, Brownfields is an environmental focus centered on redevelopment, and we're doing so many things here at OCPC for economic development that overlap with areas these sites are located in. The output and the findings from the assessment work and whatever future reuse plans we wind up doing will serve as a great supplement to other projects like our master plans, downtown revitalization plans. I know, Kathy, we're talking about, some new projects, potential sewer extensions, et cetera. So anything we learn from this program only helps us with the implementation of larger economic development efforts across the region. So as of this coming August, I think is when we'll officially be at the halfway mark of our 4-year grant. And I'll get into our budget in the next couple of slides, but for almost having reached that point, I'd say we're doing pretty well based on how much we've been able to accomplish and how much we have left to spend. We're at the stage now where Verdantis is very occupied and busy with the physical phase 1 and phase 2 work. So aside from jumping into meetings here and there to coordinate things, I've been able to essentially let them do their own thing, and they've been able to go on site and coordinate their activities with each town. After much of that has been completed, I'm going to be shifting some focus to understanding levels of contamination and determining potential for reuse for individual sites. That said, I think Tracy and I are still having some conversations and doing some research about finding some new sites. I think I mentioned before, identifying sites is usually the easy part, right? But as you might guess, it's gaining access to the sites, which is the challenge. So we've had to dump a few sites that have been approved for site eligibility, either because of access or a lack of interest from the property owner. I really like to get 1 to 2 more sites we can perform assessment activities at. Preferably ones with some good redevelopment potential that we can do reuse plans for. So in our regular check-ins, we've started to talk about which properties, including our active ones, are best suited for those and the potential to find others that meet the criteria. So this is a list of the sites we have on our docket. Right now, we're working with 7 sites that have been approved for eligibility by the EPA, 2 in Kingston, 1 in Whitman, 1 in Hanson, and 3 in Easton. We currently have 2 sites that we've requested eligibility for that we're still waiting to hear back on. 8 Maple, which is the 3rd parcel of their proposed 10 and 20 Maple Street land assembly in Kingston, and 4648 Lathrop Street in Easton. We did receive eligibility approval for 2 other properties, but wound up hitting some roadblocks at sites in Bridgewater on the BSU campus and in Whitman along Route 18. Neither of these really come as a big surprise, but they're pretty well-known sites, and each wound up, unfortunately, having their own individual complexity. So we'll continue to monitor these, but as of now, it doesn't look like we can proceed with them. As for the work we've completed or have planned to date, 6 phase 1 assessments have been done. 3 of those have had their quality assurance project plans approved, which basically outlines how environmental data collection and analysis will be conducted ahead of the phase 2 testing. 3 phase 2 assessments have been underway in Whitman at the Regal Shoe site, in Kingston at 10 Maple, and the light control property in Hanson at 100 Hawks Ave. And 3 others are planned in Easton and at the 20 Maple Street property in Kingston. So we still have some work cut out for us, but have been able to accomplish a good deal over the last 2 years. In Kingston, Whitman, and Hanson, these properties offer some good potential for redevelopment, and in Easton, new development at these 3 locations will be great for adding new growth. So before turning things over to Tracy for some specifics about each of these sites and their activities, I just wanted to provide a quick update on where we are with our program budget. Out of $500,000, we've spent 53% of our total budget, so a little bit over $265,000. So we're in good shape. With Verdantis running point on the assessment activities, I've been able to salvage a lot of my own hours for reuse plans down the pike. We'll need to keep that available for when we start to work on those. The important item in our budget to monitor closely, obviously, is the amount of funds we have to conduct assessments under our contractual line item, which is worth $353,000 and change. That being said, we've eaten up a good chunk of that now, about 68% for all the assessment work that's been done to date, and we still have a bit over $111,000 to work with. I'm hoping that with the amount of money we have left in contractual, hoping we can be able to finish what's planned and potentially add 1 or 2 extra sites that we can assess and conduct redevelopment plans for. Anyway, that's about all from me at this point. I hope this gives a good sense of where we are and how we intend to utilize the time and money we have left for the program. Overall, I think we've done some good with this, getting some properties closer to where they need to be for any potential for future reuse and development, and relieving the burden some of these sites have on their communities. And again, still looking for new leads on site. So, keep us posted if there are any new developments with sites in your communities. And if you need to contact us about anything, please reach out to me or Tracy. Tracy, happy to pass along to you for some information on our existing sites, next steps, and anything else there is left to cover.
That sounds great. So again, as Nick had mentioned, we've completed several phase 1 ESAs. So those are ASTM phase 1 environmental assessments. site assessments. Those include both a site reconnaissance or inspection of the site, along with a review of historic documentation, and just trying to really get our arms around potential environmental concerns as to whether or not a phase 2 is recommended. In some cases, that phase 2 might include a hazardous building material survey, a geophysical survey to evaluate the presence of what we call underground anomalies, such as underground storage tanks, remnants of construction and demolition or C&D debris that may have been left behind for buildings that were demolished in place. I mean, certainly both either tanks or buried C&D debris, those could be considered, surprises during construction and redevelopment. So we want to try to utilize these funds to try to overcome those surprises and try to really work with these towns just to really get our respective arms around what those costs may be to address any underground anomalies or contamination associated with building materials or soil and or groundwater. So next slide, please. So Val is here. We've been working with the town mainly to supplement some of the assessment activities that were previously done by another consultant under the town's mass development assessment grant. So quite a bit of work's already been done on 8 Maple Street. We did have our arms tied a little bit because keep in mind, anytime we're requesting eligibility to perform assessment, if it's hazardous substances or commingled hazardous substances with petroleum, it's really mainly an EPA eligibility. But if it's petroleum only, like 8 Maple, and it's not, and there is a viable party, DEP oftentimes will not provide that eligibility. The good thing is, though, we have quite a bit of data that was already collected at number 8 Maple. And we've done phase 1 ESAs at the town-owned property at 10 Maple and at 20 Maple. So really what we've been doing is working with the town to really understand what their prospective redevelopment scenario looks like. They have been, and I don't want to speak for Val. Val, you can certainly step in. It's our understanding portions of the property may be redeveloped as housing. So with that said, we are, based on the results of the phase 2 ESA at 10 Maple Street, there is evidence of petroleum contaminated soils, and we are assisting the town in applying for a mass development cleanup grant application under Community One Stop for Growth. So just a coming attraction for Dave Bancroft as he's here today. And we've really looked closely at the data. We wanted to ensure that we're not going to be addressing cleanup of contamination from that upgradient or property at 8 Maple. This is really, it's soils that appear to have been attributable both maybe by some of the former USTs that were on 10 Maple, along with historic contamination at 8 Maple, but there doesn't appear to be this ongoing contamination from number 8. So next, and so Val, I don't know if you want to talk at all about what the town's vision is for that site.
Well, we did a really cool project with Yukon TABS program. We had a student do a really great, he did a presentation last week, so we're waiting on the materials, but better than a lot of the submissions we get from our local developers on a conceptual 40-something unit layout that would be along 10, 8, and 20 Maple. We've had a developer step in and make an offer on 8 and 20, and they're looking at the possibilities and feasibilities of trying to develop that site differently than what the town has in mind. But there are real challenges to them because we have a moratorium on public water. So right now we're hoping that due diligence for that developer turns out that that there either is a way to do it or that it lands back in the possibility of the town acquiring that land at some future date if that doesn't work out. And in the meantime, on 10 Maple, we're looking at trying to clean that up so that we might be able to get that out onto the market for housing.
And Valerie, I understand also that the town is performing a feasibility study to potentially remove the existing dam. Is that correct?
We have a grant, yeah, that there's a dam down by that industrial warehouse on the end of that warehouse near the river that we got a grant from DER to design the removal of that, and that will help with the return of anadromous fish and water quality. And we're also looking at future work because there's a very dated culvert underneath 3A that contains that river's water that's very small. And we've been putting on both OCPC's and Mass Highways radar that's like, it's an old stone culvert from hundreds of years ago that we want to try to use the conservation land that's kind of this kind of soft, rounded property that's across the street from 10 and 8 and 20. That's conservation land as possible way to mitigate stormwater as sea level rise becomes a problem in this area. So anyway, we have our eyes focused on making this a bigger and better project as part of our downtown redevelopment goals.
Yeah, and just to add, Val, I know obviously you know this, but for people who are on this and can't really tell by the photo, this is 3A over here, and there's a train interchange where the commuter rail passes through here, and there's a really nice business district that would, provide some opportunity and potential if there were a new development to go here. There'd be some, foot traffic and pedestrian activity that would sort of link that business district with this area. So from an economic development perspective,
it's only a
this
block or two from the library and the Reed community center and the
right.
town cemetery and everything. So it's right in the town center.
And those natural assets, right, is some great views and access to trails, I think, right, or somewhere close by. So it's seems to be a great spot.
Yeah.
And Val, we certainly look forward to taking a look at the documentation that UConn provided. Sounds really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
As soon as we get it, we'll share it. It's really neat.
It's great. Well, next slide, please. So we have Kathy Keefe here. So regarding the Regal Shoe property, that it's a really awesome property. It's adjacent to an existing MBTA commuter rail station. And the phase 2 work we did was to supplement work that was previously done under a mass development assessment grant. Our focus was mainly on a landfilled area that appears to contain suspect animal hides from the former industrial use. And for the town to really be comfortable evaluating risk, a big part of what we're doing is trying to understand what the cost would be to either continue to cap those materials. So the landfill was capped at one point. However, it's the cap is likely eroding over time. So we're looking at two options. One is to build up that cap, maybe that as the lower cost option versus excavating out all the materials. So we'll be providing to the town a range of estimated remedial costs and remedial options. So that way the town understands really what its risks are if it decides to foreclose upon it, and then also discussing the eligibility for future funding, cleanup funding under mass development and or EPA. So we're truly excited about this property. Kathy, I don't know, not to put you on the spot, I don't know if you want to talk about this site at all.
No, so I know that the portion got cleared so you folks could go in and do your thing. So I think we're just awaiting to hear, which way forward would be the best way. But people have been asking, they've noticed the clearing, and I think there's going to be, you know, a great interest in that once we have a trajectory.
No, that's awesome. And the town was really, really helpful to really help OCPC stretch its funding by providing their DPW staff to do the vegetation clearing. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of vegetation to reach areas in the back. And we also had to be very, very cautious and sensitive to the transient and homeless populations that are residing on portions of the site. So, I mean, our biggest concern was, what if there's someone, you know, sleeping or, you know, in a sleeping bag or something. So we were very cautious and very methodical, working with the town to ensure that the vegetation clearing and all the phase 2 activities we did really were sensitive to the folks that are on the property. So yeah, I mean, this is a real passion project for me because again, I had worked on this while I was at my previous firm on that mass development assessment. So Kathy, you'll be seeing something soon. We're looking at the data, finalizing that phase 2 report and the cost estimate, and again, the evaluation of those various remedial alternatives to really work with the town and OCPC to move this property forward. Nick, I don't know if you have any comments on this property.
Yeah, I think just another great location from an ED perspective. This is the commuter rail right here, so it's as a future site of a transit-oriented development project. And I think for going west, south, I think this direction, it's I think less than a mile to the downtown, so it's fairly walkable. And with the potential for mixed use down the line. I know Kathy, we're already talking about downtown improvement stuff and anything that might come of a future master plan, but this is definitely a good example of a site that overlaps with a lot of the stuff that we hope to work with Kathy on and the town on. So another great site for us to do some work on.
And I don't want to speak for the town, but I think some of the thought was potentially mixed use, maybe where on the ground floor, commercial and upper floors, residential,
Yep.
something to that effect. And again, I want to mention one thing too, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit on it, Nick, is you had a recent meeting where you brought in a developer that recently performed a really, really great development at 999 Main Street in Hanson. And this is a site that might be of interest to them and other developers too.
Absolutely. And Lisa, I know you're on here. We at our last EDC, our Economic Development Commission meeting at OCPC, our guest speaker was Steve Egan of Egan Development, who had the successful project at 999 Main Street in Hanson. So we brought him in. I wanted to have the members of the commission learn a little bit more about his successful mixed use projects and other work he's done. For everyone else on the call, he's a developer who's focused primarily on our region, on the OCPC region. He seems to do most of his work, if not all, in communities that fall within our region, and building projects that are essentially exactly what we're looking for in many locations. What's appealing to him as a developer are these transit-oriented development areas, and he's done a couple great projects with respect to those. One in Whitman in the downtown, and the other in Hanson that's almost complete now. So we brought him in, and we have a great sort of rapport with him now on trying to align some things. And I don't know what other plans he has for future development, but we have a great relationship with him, and we're hoping that we can use that to advance economic development efforts down the road. So definitely a great opportunity, and we're hoping we can make some great use of it.
So again, we have Lisa here regarding light control. So the town did some previous assessment on the site under a mass development grant and has been awarded a mass development cleanup. We wanted to do some supplement assessment activities to support that cleanup grant by collecting some additional waste characterization samples. Along with, there are a couple of other areas of concern where there are some contaminant impacts. And we wanted to not only really get our arms around it, because when the previous assessment work was done under the Mass Development Assessment Grant, there was a new reporting condition. So that's always, and I'll talk a little bit about that as I discuss the Easton properties. That's something we always need to keep in mind as we're having conversations with municipalities. And not only that, or doing any assessment activities on privately owned properties, the potential that when we do our assessment and look at soil and groundwater concentrations, those could trigger a reporting condition with Mass DEP, and there are reporting obligations. So for example, the phase 2 report, instead of preparing a phase 2 report for this site, we're actually going to prepare it as a phase 1 tier classification that will really help the town meet its requirements under the Massachusetts contingency plan. So it's always, so we always try to think ahead and try to, again, make sure we have both the town in mind and, future um, or private owners, and again, and future developers. So again, it's really been a win-win to supplement that mass development assessment funding to help move this property forward. And Elisa, if you wanted to talk about this property at all.
Sure. Hi, Tracy.
Hey,
And so
Lisa.
the Hawks Ave Lake Control, this is a property that was donated to the town many years ago, way before my time. And the town, from what I see, they took Hubble's word for it that, they had cleaned up the contamination that was found, but we're finding now that they didn't. And so fortunately we did get the 2 grants to have an assessment done and then to have it cleaned up. And then again, fortunately with OCPC, able to do a second assessment. I mean, we have a lot of interest in this property. The 2 buildings specifically that are actually in pretty good shape structurally. But we can't really move forward until this contamination is dealt with. Any grant money that we can get now is really much appreciated, because as we all know, Hanson did not adopt the MBTA. So we're expecting grants to go away for things like this in the near future.
And I think the other thing is too, it's one of if a municipality is not acquiring a property as a tax taking, it's really, really important that that municipality does this ASTM phase 1 ESA within 180 days of acquisition to meet EPA's all appropriate inquiry or AAI requirements. Unfortunately, since the town did not do that before acquiring this even as a gift, it's not eligible for EPA funding either. So that's the other, again, the real benefit of this program to perform these ASTM phase 1 ESAs. So next slide, please. Thanks, Lisa. So we have performed assessments on 3 of 4 of the town-owned properties that the town is interested in eventually divesting itself of, since their departments are going to be relocated to the future new public safety complex. So, keep in mind, we're trying to work, as I mentioned, work with the town really in a stepwise fashion. We've completed the phase 1 ESAs on, you'll see the 413 Bay Road, the fire station property, the abutting 417 Bay Road water department, and the DPW property. However, the conversations we continue to have with the town is they need to keep in mind, okay, if again we perform any assessment activities that could trigger a Mass DEP reporting obligation, and now thinking, do they want to go there, right? Is that something, do they want to wait and at some point apply for additional funding? Would they prefer that an interested developer do that? So those are the ongoing conversations we're having with the town. Again, they've been thinking about housing. that's part of the conversation for these 3 properties. So really, really exciting to say the least. So do you want me to take this slide or do you want to take this slide, Nick?
You can feel free to jump in if you want.
So again, I think what we really want to try to do is continue to work with towns to understand their overall revitalization strategy. Sometimes those might be in a downtown or in a quarter, and identifying these underutilized properties. Some of those might be potential tax takings or foreclosures. They could be, for example, like a mill property that is maybe not fully occupied and is not really providing great tax revenue to the town, where the city or town really sees better use. So we're trying to continue to have those conversations with each of the towns in OCPC's jurisdictions. Also really trying to really be a matchmaker and have conversations with property owners that may be sitting on similar types of properties. They could be properties that have sat on the market for a while because there's this perception of contamination that prospective developers really aren't really interested, or maybe they think the price is too high, but just trying to use this program to really understand what those unknowns are, and also the access agreements. Nick mentioned how important those are. And he also mentioned again the developer engagement. So that's something as we are really moving forward through the phase 2s, starting to have those conversations with developers and really kind of getting their input on what they're interested in. And it was great to have someone like Steve Egan at OCPC to really give us an idea. Oh, what are you thinking about? And again, they looked at that Whitman property and thought, that might be a potential candidate. So that's really the benefit of this program, from assessment through the phase 2 investigations, and really then trying to work with the town to come up with the next steps on cleanup and redevelopment, and mainly trying to uncover potential issues or concerns that could get in the way of redevelopment. And again, I mentioned it comes up so often, and we try to do this again in terms of understanding what the cost would be to manage excess soils, for example, as part of construction and redevelopment, what those costs would be based on the contamination. Is there potentially, again, that buried C&D debris? We've seen quite often, both in cities and towns, in the past, buildings that were demolished in place. So in other words, just rather than move all of the material underground, basements, foundations, oftentimes the buildings were just literally buried in place within that building footprint. So you start to think of what the ramifications of that, especially including lead-based paint and asbestos. So again, this is an opportunity for us, even if it's to just do a geophysical survey to evaluate if there is anything in the subsurface that could be a not so great surprise for a future developer. Off to you, Nick.
Yeah, and I think everything the past 2 years and what we've been able to accomplish has been great. A lot of these sites have just been stalled for forever, and while it may still take some time for some of these sites to actually get moving or closer to redevelopment, these things have to get done, right? And hopefully, some of the folks taking advantage of this program will be able to get closer to that goal, within the next few years, and hopefully it leads them to other grants and other projects down the line, so we can get these revenue generating again. So at this point, before we close out, I just wanted to open things up. If anyone had any questions or anything else they wanted to ask or talk about, feel free. Otherwise, that's about all we have. But anyone else have questions or anything they want to discuss?
I just wanted to remind everyone the one-stops are due June 3rd, I believe, right? Correct? Did I give you the right date? Well, I say the 3rd only because that way you have an extra day built in. With that. And we have had people who have waited to the last day, so in this case, the 4th, and then try to submit it, and the system's jammed, and it doesn't make it in time, and then they're crying afterwards, and we can't help you. So make it the 3rd in your head.
Sounds great. Thanks, David. Well, this about wraps everything up. Thanks for hopping on with us, and let us know if you have any questions or opportunities that arise. Again, we want to keep you all informed of our progress on this, and I would say we should probably plan on reconvening sometime after the summer, and as we get closer to zeroing out our funds for assessment activities. But that said, thanks again to everyone for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your day. Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.